Is that, are we ready? We're good. Hello?
We can hear you.
Oh, good. We cannot see you yet, but we can't see you either. We're watching a lovely county video.
Can you see us now?
No, we'll tell you when we can. I can kick it off if.
She can go ahead and begin speaking. It's just the display. She's ready to go.
Okay, we can go ahead and get started.
Okay, we're just flying a little blind here, but that's okay. I can figure it out. Okay, oh, there we go. Hi, everybody. Happy to call to order the June 20th meeting of the Santa Barbara County Air Pollution Control District Board of Directors. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Director Williams? Director Hartman?
Here.
Director Nelson? Director Lavanino?
Here.
Director King?
Here.
Director Clark? Director Perotti?
Here.
Director Julian?
Here.
Director Aiello?
Here.
Director Rouse?
Here.
Director Patino?
Here.
Director Infante?
Here.
And Chair Capps.
And I'm here. Let's please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That's where I miss Frank Gospels. His voice was so booming, you couldn't hear him.
We had a little delay down here. Okay, we first need to approve the minutes. May I have a motion, please? Or first, is there any discussion or public comment on the minutes? Unlikely.
Chair Capps, we did not receive any public comment on the minutes.
Okay, I'm asking for a motion and a second, please.
So moved.
I'll second. Perotti.
You got a motion
So it
by,
was a motion by Rouse? Yep. Second by Perotti?
Yes.
All right.
a roll call vote, please.
Director Hartman?
Aye.
Director Lavanino?
Aye.
Director King?
Aye.
Director Perotti?
Aye.
Director Julian?
Aye. Aye.
Thank you. Director Aiello?
Here.
Director,
Whatever.
Director Rouse?
Aye.
Director Patino?
Aye.
Director Infante?
Aye.
And Chair Capps.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay, let's go to the admin items. Do any board members wish to pull any of these items? I don't see any here in Santa Barbara. Any in Santa Maria? Okay,
Not seeing any in Santa Maria.
Okay, great. Let's then have a motion and a second for the entire administrative agenda, please.
So move. Patino.
Second King.
Okay, thank you. Will the clerk please take a roll call vote on the admin items?
And Chair Capps, just for the record, we did not receive any public comment on any of the agenda items.
Thank you so much.
Director Hartman?
Aye.
Director Nelson?
Aye.
Director Lavanino?
Aye.
Director King?
Aye.
Director Perotti?
Aye.
Director Julian?
Aye.
Director Aiello?
Aye.
Director Rouse?
Aye.
Director Patino?
Aye.
Director Infante?
Aye.
And Chair Capps.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, great. Now I think we go to D1, which is an update on public outreach efforts, activities.
Chair Capps, we go to the Director's Report,
Okay,
item E.
item E.
Hi, good afternoon. I'll keep this brief. Red is on? Okay. Good afternoon. I'll keep my updates today very brief. I have one item that I'd like to bring to your attention. It's in regards to a settlement agreement that was reached earlier in June with Central Coast Agriculture for violations of their Lompoc cannabis manufacturing facility. We were very proud that we were able to come to an agreement. It took a lot of work on our staff's part as well as on CCA's part to come into agreement with the settlement. 1.3 million was the total. This will be incorporated into the budget, and I will be giving a brief overview of how we incorporated this into the budget and the modifications that were needed from our last meeting in May. We'll have a percentage of the funds going to a clean air fund for the individuals who live in the Lompoc community. We'll be bringing that back to your board at a later date to approve and move forward with. We're also going to increase resources for our surveillance of cannabis activities countywide. So that will make sure that all operators, manufacturing operators, and all other cannabis facilities are within our regulatory scope. So we look forward to that. We also earmarked a portion of it for our McCoy project, our office, and making the meeting room have fully audio-visual capabilities so we can host and do remote meetings at that facility and effectively communicate with other locations. So we're very excited to get this violation behind us and move forward. And I also wanted to give you an update on where CCA is with their permit activities. In November of 2023, they were issued a final authority to construct. They have installed and implemented the solvent recovery equipment. They're waiting on one more piece of equipment, their thermal oxidizers, to be installed. It was back ordered. At this point, we anticipate it'll be fully implemented come September of this year. Once it's installed, operational, and tested to ensure it meets the permit requirements, they'll have their final permit. And this new arrangement, this new emission control technology at CCA's facility will set a new standard for best available control technology in the state of California. So they've definitely committed the resources to bring it up to significantly reduce their emissions. And one aspect that I think is just remarkable of where they were when we came across their violations and where they are today, and they're going to be 90% less emissions than where they were emitting. So great amount of effort on their parts to get this project under permit authority, yeah.
Chair Capps, this is Commissioner, Director.
Director, yeah.
Hartman. I just, have they been processing while they have put this equipment in, or have they stopped and they won't start until they're?
No, that's the magnitude of the settlement is an illustration of the amount of emissions that have occurred over the years. It was quite significant. They continued to operate all throughout this time period when the NOV was issued.
I see. So they've continued to operate even through today.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then could you just give us a hint about the Clean Air Fund for Lompoc, the kinds of things that might be part of that?
We haven't had an opportunity to really delve into options. One thing that I know is very supported and favorable in Guadalupe, for example, is an air purifier program that we have some funding, which actually Mike will be talking about later, with 617 funds for a disadvantaged community in Old Town Goleta. But Lompoc doesn't have that designation as a state, so they're not eligible for a program like that with the funds that we have. So that could be one use. But we need to do more evaluation and have a better understanding of community needs and how we can incorporate these this funding to best suit the needs of the community.
Great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank
And
you.
that concludes my director's report.
Thank you, Director Arlen Janae, and thank you for the communications on this in advance. I really appreciate on this settlement. Clerk, are there public comment on the director's report?
Chair Capps, we did not receive any public comment on the director's report.
Okay. Thank you so much. We can then move on to just general public comment. Item F, members of the public to speak on items that are not on the agenda. Do we have anybody wishing to do so?
Chair Capps and members of the board, we do not have any public comments on items not on the agenda.
Excellent. Then moves us to our few discussion items. G1, adoption of the fiscal year budget.
Discussion item G1, adoption of the fiscal year 2024-25 budget. Consider the fiscal year 2024-25 budget as follows. 1, hold a public hearing to consider and adopt the budget for fiscal year 2024-25 as presented in the fiscal year 2024-25 proposed budget document. And 2, adopt the following. 2A, budget resolution approving the fiscal year 2024-25 district budget. And 2B, salary resolution amending the classification and salary plan to adjust the salary for all staff based on the collective bargaining agreement and the management personnel benefits resolution previously approved by your board on August 18, 2022.
All right, I have a very short presentation. Normally, when we have our budget presentation, it's a 2-hearing process, and we provide the hearing in May. And if we don't receive any comments or recommended changes to it, we then just move forward at the June meeting as part of the consent. But as I just mentioned, with the CCA settlement, there are changes to what we presented to you in January. So I wanted to walk through. May. Thank you. Did I say January? It started with a J. I don't know. Anyway, I wanted to walk through a few slides. I have 3 slides as far as what was changed. And I'll start off with the first slide. Next slide, please. This is what we presented at the May hearing. At that point, we had $3.7 million for our proposed budget. This is a reduction in our budget of 30%, and that was primarily due to the way we're allocating our pass-through grant funds. What we found over the years is we have not been successful in spending all of those pass-through grant funds the year we received them. So rather than inflating our budget, we elected to put the funding into fund balance for future years because the grant process is taking longer and longer the more we go to zero-emission vehicle technology or infrastructure. So it's just a better reflection of the actual amount of funds that we can get out the door. When you remove the pass-through funds, we have $9.9 million of our operating budget. And that includes the 34 full-time employees that we have today. So that's what we presented on at our last board meeting. And the next slide illustrates the changes since May. So at the top, you could see the $1.3 million that we received earlier this month from the settlement. And I already referenced how it's allocated to the Clean Air Fund, expanded surveillance, and the equipment at McCoy. The $825,000 is being moved into fund balance for future years. So it's a breakdown of, $475,000 additional funds in our operating budget for this year going forward, or for next year going forward. So this summarizes the changes. It moves us up to a $14.2 million total budget. Of that, 10.4 is our operations, and that is a 1.6% increase from the current fiscal year we're in, so it's relatively the same amount of money that we have today. With the set aside in our fund balance, we have a fund balance now of the $2 million, which meets the recent board adopted policy for a 20% fund balance. So we are now at our goal that you just approved. So, and the staffing levels stay the same. And that concludes my presentation. I'm available, and Christina and I are available if you have any questions. Now you're Christina, not just Tina.
Okay, thanks for that very concise budget report. Are there any questions or comments from the directors?
Seeing none in Santa Maria.
Anybody here? Looks like you did your job giving us a heads up ahead of time and all that. So, okay, any members of the public that wish to speak on this item, clerk?
Chair Capps, we did not receive any public comment on this item.
Okay, then we just need a motion and a second to adopt this budget.
King for approval.
Second.
Looks like we have a motion from King and a second from Director Rouse.
Oh, thank you.
Sure.
Director Hartman,
Aye.
Director Nelson,
Aye.
Director Lavanino,
Aye.
Director King,
Aye.
Director Perotti,
Aye.
Director Julian,
Aye.
Director Aiello,
Aye.
Director Rouse,
Aye.
Director Patino,
Aye.
Director Infante,
Aye.
and Chair Capps.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thanks all. The next item is G2. Will the clerk please read that into the record?
Discussion item G2, overview of voluntary clean air grants and incentive programs. Receive and file a presentation on the status of the district's clean air grant and incentive programs.
All right, this afternoon, Mike McKay, Air Quality Specialist in the Planning Division, will provide a presentation on both our traditional grants and our new incentive type programs.
And is this on currently? The red light's not on?
There it is.
There.
Good? All right. No, it's a good presentation, I promise. So good afternoon, Chair Capps, members of the board. Today I'm going to be giving a brief presentation of the district's grant incentive program. And I'll just go ahead and get right into it. So next. So over the last 35 years, the district has distributed around $60 million in state and local funds for voluntary grant incentive projects throughout the county. The mitigation funds you see in dark blue were required to mitigate excess emissions, and most of those funds were expended in the 1990s. The DMV funds in light blue and the CARB funds in green have primarily been our source of funding since that time. So in order to receive these funds for new equipment in our program, we're required to follow certain definitions set forth in state guidelines. In addition, it's a voluntary program. It's intended to assist in the replacement of diesel fuel equipment that is not required to be replaced by regulation, so completely voluntary. Diesel exhaust is a toxic air contaminant, and a lot of equipment that's been in service for decades, many of which have engines with no emission controls. So for fiscal year 23-24, we were able to utilize each of the funding sources on this slide to fund a wide variety of projects throughout the county. One of the challenges we face are the different sources of funding that we receive and what we can fund with those dollars. For example, Carl Moyer funds can fund any type of project from infrastructure to marine to agriculture, while farmer funds are strictly just for agriculture projects. And for our 23 program, we had a 40-day application window where we received 91 applications. So outreach for this program does also have challenges. I've spoken to many grantees who don't particularly care about promoting the program because the more applications there are, the more competition there is. So that is a challenge of ours. But at the same time, half of the 91 applications we received this year were from first-time applicants. So our outreach is working. We rely on multiple avenues like social media, presentations like this, and news releases. And I also have a good relationship with all of our off-road dealers on the Central Coast, and I know they promote the program with their customers on a daily basis. So each box on this slide is a step to process to qualify for receiving funding for a project. And while the information we require is straightforward to us, we do understand, especially for first-time applicants, that compiling the required information is likely outside of their normal business operations. We understand the difficulty for applicants to gather and submit a complete application packet. We're well aware of that. So it's our goal to make sure that everyone receives a high level of customer service and leaves our program with the same experience as the previous. For our 23 program, we were able to fund 44 projects, 10 infrastructure, 4 marine, and a school bus. So these pictures represent a variety of the projects that we're able to fund. Each type has its own nuances, of course. For example, the marine projects, they have to pull their boat from the water, and it has to be out of the water for some time for the old engine to be removed, the new engine to be installed. So we work closely with them, for example, to make sure that any downtime they have doesn't impact how they earn their money, during whether they're lobster, whatever their season is. We make sure that we've offered recent extensions to marine projects because of just that. And the off-road category historically is our most popular. This fiscal year was no different. 50% of our grant funds were obligated to off-road equipment. And the equipment's high usage, which means they tend to have the greatest emission benefits. Typically, this category will have a 3-year project life. So the 140 tons of emissions you see here on the bottom is reflective only of those 3 years. So long-term, the emission reductions are much higher. And for most projects, we perform 4 separate inspections, a pre, a post, and a salvage inspection, which are all required. And then we try to audit every inspection at least one time during their project life. And these can all vary on difficulty and length. So the next slide, we have a short video. It's under a minute, and it just shows what a salvage inspection is. So we're required to document this process with pictures and video. And one rule for this required inspection is that the existing engine and frame are rendered unusable. We do allow, at least the engine and frame are. Yeah, the tires are still good. And so the inspection must be completed prior to the grantee receiving any funding for their project. So this is a required step. So this project here is unique in that it's the first electric loader that we funded, and it also received funding from 2 different sources. The core program through the state, which is for clean off-road equipment, that's directly through the state, and then our grant program. So each source has its own funding requirements. So for example, core requires new electric equipment, but it doesn't require destruction of the old equipment. Where our program doesn't require electric equipment, but it requires destruction of the equipment. So together, it needs to be electric and the old equipment has to be destroyed for this particular project. Utilizing both of these, the grantee was able to receive around 70% of the total cost of their new equipment using both of those programs. So here we have a map of the county showing all grant project locations. Let's see, there are 3 pink areas which are defined by the state as disadvantaged communities. One of them is kind of small to see right there in the center, the San Ynez Band of Chumash Indians Reservation. And then we have 2 census tracts, one in Guadalupe and one in Goleta. These represent, the yellow bands around those areas represent a half-mile border around those disadvantaged communities. And then the underlying light blue areas are defined by the state as low-income communities. And we prioritize both of these areas for grant incentive funding in our program. The upper right portion you see there is where a few county lines come together, so that pink is just outside of our jurisdiction. And while the Santa Maria Valley will always have the largest number of off-road projects, our goal is to try and provide funds for applicants throughout the county, throughout our entire district, and this map hopefully is a good example of that accomplishment. So moving ahead to next fiscal year, this slide shows the proposed funding amounts we plan to utilize for our program. And we do look forward to being able to continue to fund multiple projects throughout the county. But as you can see here, there are no budgeted farmer funds for our 2024 program. So depending on the upcoming budgeting decisions, this data could change slightly. And if it does, we'll just keep the board apprised of any updates. So our 24 program is set to open on July 29th. We're going to be utilizing the same 40-day application window, where the final day to submit applications will be on September 6th. We found this window is, along with plenty of outreach, is enough time for everyone to gather all their information, get everything submitted. We've already begun notifying our outreach list, which is over 1,100 contacts, and we're currently preparing the 2024 applications and web pages with updated information. And I was able to present our program to the Santa Barbara Harbor Commission in the middle of May, and then as well to the County of Santa Barbara Agriculture Advisory Committee last week on June 13th. And it's something I've done a few years running, so I've got a lot of positive feedback from those committees. So I'll just touch base real quick on a couple of our other programs. Firstly, LEAF, one of our most popular programs. And as noted in the board letter, we have a little over $315,000 remaining from the Carl Moyer State Reserve grant we received last year, which was $740,000 in total. This grant was created to fund projects throughout the state for the replacement of gas-powered landscape equipment with zero-emission technology. And we're currently working on zero-emission equipment demonstrations to further promote that program. Then our Community Air Protection Grant, as Aaron and Supervisor Hartman had mentioned earlier, these are 3 newly approved programs that we have, and we're currently exploring them. And as we progress through researching each of them, we'll obviously keep everyone here apprised of where we're at with that research and how these projects are going to work to better serve those communities. And then finally, our wood smoke program, which we'll be launching in the fall. The last wood smoke program focused on natural gas replacements. Those are no longer allowed, so we're focusing this program on electric heat pumps. And after that, I'm not sure. But for now. So we'll go to the next slide. So before you worry too much, I have no intention of reading these to you. But I just want to share them as part of the presentation. They're great examples of how our grant and incentive programs are a positive impact to both business and personal lives in our community. The first testimonial there is from the grantee who received funding for the electric loader on that earlier slide. So that wraps up the presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. And here's contact info for anybody that needs it or wants to be added to our grant outreach list.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. McKay. That was a great presentation.
Question, if I may?
Yes, please.
Thank you. In the, near Solvang, in one of the wine growing areas, one of the vintners got, through the LEAF program, got one of the electric tractors. He put up a roof with 100 solar panels in order to charge this thing. Does the LEAF program provide, or any of the other programs for the electrification, provide for the money to put in the solar panels to charge them?
Yeah, so this program and this project you're talking about wasn't funded through the LEAF program. That's just landscape equipment. That was funded. We actually gave them funding for the tractor, and we gave them funding for the infrastructure, which is a standalone project in itself. So I don't know if you have anything to add to that. Alex was more involved with that specific project.
Yeah, so the Carl Moyer guidelines does allow for solar-powered EV charging infrastructure. So as long as the charger is connected to the solar-powered system, it could be eligible for funding. And those projects are actually eligible for a higher funding percentage than the baseline for just a standalone EV charger project.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other
And
questions?
Chair Caps, this
Yes.
is King. I have a question.
Please, proceed.
Yeah, on these off-road electric equipment, on these loaders, are they apples to apples as far as workload and horsepower, et cetera?
Yeah, the Carl Moyer guidelines require like for like. So they basically have to perform the same duty. And they're supposed to be within a certain amount of horsepower, but a 40 horsepower electric's a little different than a 100 horsepower diesel. And, you know, so there is a little bit of a gap there, and we're allowed flexibility as long as we can confirm that the equipment is going to perform the same as the old equipment. So if it's a 40 horsepower loader and it was a 100 horsepower diesel, but it's doing the same thing and it's performing the same, then it's something that we would likely be okay with.
Yeah, that was my question. I just wondered if they had to give up something to go electric on that.
No, they say that it has to be within 125% of the existing horsepower, and that's just a number that they put out there to make sure people aren't trying to get funding for a 300 horsepower tractor for an 80 horsepower tractor. But in this specific example, it was very much like for like.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair
Dr.
Capps, this is Director Hartman.
Yeah, please proceed.
A couple questions. For the destruction of the vehicle at the scrapyard, then, do you have to make an appointment for that exact vehicle?
The equipment, I have pretty good relationships with all of them. There's a few of them. There's one in Arroyo Grande that does it. There's a couple like off of Betaravia. You're allowed to destroy it in your own yard if you'd like. So I can, I work with the scrap yards, and the grantee will call me saying, hey, can we drop it off next Thursday? I'll make sure it's okay. The scrapyard will set it aside and wait till I can get there to witness it, because that's very important that we have to witness the destruction.
Yeah.
I'm going to knock on wood. We haven't had any issues with things being destroyed before we've witnessed it. So it is a matter of just staying in communication with the person that's receiving the grant and the scrapyards.
And then for the off-road vehicles, could you talk a little bit more about the costs? How much more does electric cost than traditional gas or diesel? And then what are you hearing about performance?
Well, on the smaller scale stuff, the tractor that Infante was talking about, that was a smaller tractor. I mean, I want to say it was 50 horsepower maybe. It was roughly the same cost as a diesel tractor, if not a little bit less. But where the impacts come are the infrastructure to charge. So that's where the cost is. It's multifaceted, but the equipment itself is almost like for like in cost. But the problem is the charging for that. We have a project right now that we actually just paid, and it was co-funded with CORE, and we gave them $200,000. CORE gave them $150,000 of some sort, and it was a $500,000 piece of equipment. And it's a big electric tractor. And they're having not issues, but they're working on installing the infrastructure to make sure that the thing can charge. So the response from the field is the small stuff's fine, the big stuff not at this point. The bigger farmers, when you're plowing and grading and that, they're not excited about electrification. On the smaller row crop stuff like the vineyard, and that tractor itself actually was an autonomous tractor, so they plugged in the GPS and they could walk away. Yeah, it's a nice.
Carry a case of beer in the front.
Yes, they did actually. That was a requirement. So the feedback is kind of multifaceted. On the big stuff, it's not there. On the smaller stuff, people are okay with it, where they can just plug it in overnight. And they're not, some of these harvesting tractors, they're running 12 hours a day, and they just know that there's going to be issues with those batteries.
So does that shape what projects we fund?
We don't get very many applications for them. So the shaping of it isn't so much us making a decision on what the field wants to do. The field is telling us what they want to do, and that's what we're seeing, is that's the feedback that we're getting. Last year we got one application for electrification, and that was what we funded, and it was perfect because the pricing was right, and it was a like for like, and everything worked out. The year before was the big tractor that I'm talking about, and then that vineyard tractor. And the year before that, there was one small one in a garden down in Goleta. So
We are getting applications for school bus electrification.
yeah, the school bus stuff, the electrification is there. Yeah, and then there's the MTD stuff that's going on. I mean, those are all, we're seeing that stuff. But as far as the off-road equipment, it's
Work in progress.
yeah, they're driving it. They're letting us know we're not going to go out there and force to give them money for it if they don't want it. So being that it's voluntary, that's part of it as well. So
In Capcoa, we were also talking recently about, on the heavy duty front, hydrogen, and the role that hydrogen really needs to step in and play in order to transition away from diesel. So Capcoa is talking about holding a venue next year that focuses on hydrogen. So
Okay, we
I'll
have some,
keep the board posted when that happens.
thank you. We have some questions down here. Director Rouse.
Yeah, hi, I had a question about the grant funding and its source as it goes going forward, and thinking about things like DMV charges and different kind of mitigation charges where we get the grant funding from. As these programs become successful, what is the future of those funds and their availability?
Yeah, DMV, that's a state law that requires everyone who registers a car within Santa Barbara County currently to pay $2 towards the 923 grant funding that was illustrated in the pie chart. They also have $4, and that's a piece of legislation 2766, so a total of $6 goes to air quality work. There's been talk also within Capcoa of wanting to increase that amount. It doesn't have a CPI factor associated, so it's tied way back to when it was originally approved by the legislature. But the appetite to increase DMV fees, it's just not come around to a point where all 35 air districts are wanting to put their neck on the line and push for an increase in DMV funds. At the state level, grants are very well supported by the legislature. It's been extremely successful over the years. They're voluntary. The biggest challenge is our state budget, and that's why we're not seeing farmer in this year's draft budget that's being discussed. And that's surprising because farmer has the agricultural community support behind it. And even with air districts and the agricultural community, we still have not yet been successful to get it incorporated back in.
No, I'm aware of that in the universe of grant funding that where you look at from the state and the state budget. But I was also curious, with the DMV, is that are those fees charged for both internal combustion vehicles and electric vehicles, or are they the same, just vehicle for vehicle?
Yep, it is, yes.
So I would see at some point if there were a push for higher fees or whatever, that sooner or later the electric vehicle companies and or the consumers are going to push back, or I think they would anyway, especially as some of the incentives are going away for the purchase of them in the first place. So,
Yeah, I haven't heard of any pushback yet, but that's time will tell.
all right,
For
very good.
sure.
Thank you.
All right, and Director Prodi, please.
My question is about the grant process itself. It appears to me that you're doing a really great job of getting the word out, but I'm wondering if there are organizations or small groups that might be missing out on this on these projects and grant availability. And by that I mean, are the grant applications difficult for somebody that maybe has not done a grant before? I'm just curious what that looks like.
Yeah, we've heard that they can be difficult until they talk to us and then we walk them through it. And they all have my cell number. I've talked to people multiple times off hours and weekends. I get calls occasionally where they're in the middle of something, it's their free time and they just have a question. So I'll just help them fill it in. And it's, you know, and then we have a whole bilingual staff at the APCD that's able to help with that. So if you have any opinions or any committees or any groups out there that you think aren't being reached or don't know about it, then let us know. And I have no problem presenting to them and reaching out to them as well. But we really try to reach out to all the local committees within the county that we can to try to promote it. So, I mean, we're oversubscribed, which is great. You know, it's better than being undersubscribed. But as Aaron mentioned earlier, the delays in the funding moving forward is because we're getting a lot of interest in infrastructure and school buses and stuff where the projects take a lot longer to happen. Where the off-road stuff, I mean, it can be 3 months and it's done and it's paid and it's out the door. So yeah, the application process can be daunting until they talk to us and realize that I know we're a government agency and there's a lot of precursors that might come with that, but it's actually very, very straightforward. There's no tricks or anything. So.
Well, thank you for that. And the only reason I ask that is I know that we've stumbled upon that in the city of Goleta with the application process being a little tricky. And so what we did, we started it before the pandemic and then it took a break for a while, but we started it up again where we would have a day where if anybody wanted to come and talk with staff and get help on what we were looking for in the application, kind of a workshop of sorts. It seemed to work.
Yeah, we're definitely open-ended on that. They can call at any time. That's why we start our outreach early, and I've already received 2 calls since we sent the email out last week with questions. So,
thank you.
That's great. Thanks for explaining about the outreach. Any other questions or deliberation from the board or comments rather?
Not seeing anything in Santa Maria.
Okay, great. I just want to call for public comment.
Chair Capps, we did not receive any public comment on this item.
Okay, I think does this require a vote? I believe it does.
It does not.
It does not. Okay. Well, then we will move on to the next item. Clerk, if you could please read that into the record.
Discussion item G3, update on the vessel speed reduction program. Consider recommendations as follows. 1, receive an update on the vessel speed reduction program, and 2, delegate authority to the Air Pollution Control Officer to sign the memorandum of agreement between the California Marine Sanctuary Foundation, Santa Barbara County Air Pollution Control District, and the Ventura County Air Pollution Control District for a climate pollution reduction grant.
All right, this afternoon, Alex Economou, our Planning Division Manager, will be presenting. And I just wanted to check in, will Sean also be joining you?
Yes, Sean is available from the Santa Barbara hearing room.
Okay, and Sean Hastings is with NOAA. So he's one of our partners in this program. He's available to assist.
All right, thank you, Aaron. Good afternoon, Chair Capps and members of the board. As Aaron mentioned, I'm Alex Economou, and I'm here today to present on the district's vessel speed reduction program. As Aaron mentioned, we also have Sean Hastings with NOAA's Channel Islands National Marine Sanctuary in attendance in Santa Barbara to help answer any questions that your board may have about the whale benefits associated with vessel speed reduction. Each year, we see thousands of vessel transits through the Santa Barbara Channel regions as these vessels travel to and from the ports of Long Beach, Los Angeles, and Port Hueneme. With over 100 miles of coastline in Santa Barbara County, the emissions from these ships can blow onshore and impact our local communities. Ocean-going vessels currently account for about 42% of ozone precursor emissions countywide. While these ships are outside of the district's regulatory control, district staff have been actively tracking marine shipping emissions and advocating for additional federal and international regulations for the last 3 decades. In our most recent 2022 ozone plan, we included an updated emission inventory and growth projections for the marine shipping sector. This forecast shows that the NOx emissions for marine shipping are projected to increase by approximately 45% from those 2018 levels, before peaking in 2035. Federal and international regulations currently require that newly built ships use emission controls on their engines, but it'll take another 10 plus years to phase out most of the older, dirtier engines. Since we don't have the ability to directly regulate these vessels, the district has turned to a voluntary vessel speed reduction program. The program is called Protecting Blue Whales and Blue Skies, and it was created as a partnership for cleaner air, safer whales, and quieter oceans. The partnership includes the air districts in Santa Barbara, Ventura, San Luis Obispo, the Monterey Bay, and the Bay Area, as well as national marine sanctuaries, foundations, and nonprofits. In the program, companies are asked to voluntarily slow their ships down to 10 knots or less, which reduces air pollution emissions, as well as the risk of fatal ship strikes on whales and ocean noise. The program began as a small-scale pilot in 2014 and has grown year after year ever since. The VSR program is seasonal and runs from May through December, which is a time period that we typically measure high levels of ozone, and is also when whales are present off the California coast. The program has historically been focused on container ships and auto carriers, but has expanded in the last couple of years to also include bulk and general cargo vessels, as well as tankers. We're able to evaluate the cooperation levels of the companies using their onboard tracking systems, and cooperation rates are measured based on the percentage of total fleet distance traveled at 10 knots or less. As you can see on this table, we have 3 levels of recognition awards: Sapphire, Gold, and Blue Sky. For the 2023 program, we asked the companies to slow down in the large green areas shown on the screen. These zones encompass the San Francisco Bay region on the left and the Southern California region on the right. One of the big changes in 2023 was the addition of the Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary, which added about 60 to 80 more nautical miles along the California coast. "33 different companies participated in the program last year, operating 709 vessels that slowed down for over 375,000 nautical miles, reducing NOx emissions by over 1,200 tons. If you take a look at attachment A on page 8 of the board letter, which looks like this, you'll see that the figures represent an increase of 10 participating companies over the 2022 levels. And they've also increased the slow speed nautical miles from the year before by 40%. The graphic on the right shows the 3 recognition levels for the 2023 program. 2023 was the highest performing season to date, with 81% of the vessel traffic from the participating companies slowing down to 10 knots or less. And the program continues to see improved cooperation rates each year. So on that graphic on the right, you can see that 13 companies received the highest award in 2023, which is an increase of 5 companies from the 2022 year. Table 1 in the board letter signifies all the companies that were new to the program in 2023. The 2023 program pivoted away from providing financial incentives to focusing on additional recognition efforts for the participating companies. This decision was made based on the success of prior VSR seasons, in which most of the financial incentives were generously declined by the companies in order to help maintain the program and recognition efforts in future years. Pictured on the slide is a picture from the Port of Huenemi's World Ocean Days event that was hosted last week on June 11th, which included an award ceremony for the 2023 VSR program. Outreach for the 2023 program included various news releases issued by the partners, social media posts, a program fact sheet, and numerous articles and advertisements in trade and business journals. The graphics on the slide show the reach of our efforts with last year's marketing cycle. Even without those financial incentives, the program continues to grow, focusing on the value of positive media coverage and marketing campaigns for participating companies, as well as drawing industry and public awareness to the VSR program. Since 2022, The program has also maintained a brand ambassador component, which is open to any company that ships with one or more of the VSR program participants. To date, 8 companies in the Port of Hueneme have become brand ambassadors for the program. Related to the Blue Whales and Blue Skies program, we wanted to update the board on AB 2298, which was introduced this past February by Assemblymember Greg Hart. This bill would build upon the existing Blue Whales and Blue Skies program and would expand the voluntary vessel speed reduction program statewide along the entire California coast. The bill has unanimously passed through the State Assembly with bipartisan support and has moved on to the Senate, where it has been referred to the Senate Environmental Quality Committee and has passed through the Senate Natural Resources and Water Committee unanimously. On the right is a picture of Assemblymember Hart's press conference this past February at the Santa Barbara City College. On the federal side, Congressman Carbajal and Huffman announced new federal legislation just last week called the Alan S. Lowenthal Blue Whales, Blue Skies Act. The goal of the proposed federal legislation would be to create a federal recognition program and expand the voluntary VSR program along the entire U.S. West Coast from Canada to Mexico. Lastly, I'd like to provide an update of the Environmental Protection Agency's Climate Pollution Reduction Grant Program, which provides funding to develop and implement plans for reducing greenhouse gas emissions and air pollution. The County of Ventura received a planning grant through the program and included vessel speed reduction as an emission reduction measure in their priority climate action plan. As a result of being included in the county's plan, the VSR program is now eligible to receive implementation grant funds, and the Ventura County APCD submitted an application to EPA this past March, requesting approximately $14 million in grant funding over a 5-year period to help grow the program and expand Blue Whales and Blue Skies statewide. Of that funding, approximately $860,000 is earmarked for our air district in pass-through funds. Since the Blue Whales and Blue Skies program represents a partnership among several different organizations, a memorandum of agreement is necessary to outline the roles and responsibilities of each agency that plans to do work on the grant project. It's also a requirement of the EPA. So with that, in conclusion, staff recommends that your board delegate authority to the Air Pollution Control Officer to sign the Climate Pollution Reduction Grant, MOA, between the Ventura County Air Pollution Control District, the California Marine Sanctuary Foundation, and our air district. And that concludes my presentation, and we'd be happy to answer any questions that the board may have. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That's a good progress report. Appreciate it. Any questions or comments from the directors? Director Rouse.
Chair Capps, Director Hartman.
Okay. Director Hartman, take it away.
Do you have any idea what percentage of vessels or trips are participating in the program that go through our channel?
It varies based on the vessel type. I believe for container ships, it's roughly 90% of the container ships. We have some numbers in the board letter as well, but we could definitely follow up with breakdowns for each vessel type.
That's extraordinary.
Director Rouse down here.
Yeah, I just, more of a comment. I'm a vessel tracking hobbyist, and I rarely see anything commercial going plus 10 knots, maybe at 11 from time to time. But I just want to point out how successful these programs are as opposed to trying to legislate things out of the way you ask for a private partnership, which I think we have very successfully with the shipping companies. I think that's a real testament to the way the program works. And I think the memorandum of understanding between districts is a great idea. I think it's a nice standard to have, and perhaps a worldwide standard someday.
Excellent. Back to Santa Maria. Any questions or comments there?
Not seeing anything in Santa Maria.
Okay, actually, now we're bouncing back here because Director Prodi has a.
Sorry,
It's okay, it's all good.
I just want to say thank you to everyone that put a lot of energy into the success of this program. Remember when it started out, it was just a few, and then, it was voluntary, and it's grown, and now look where we're at. So kudos to everyone, and thank you.
I did want to add one comment, and actually Sean Hastings would be the best person to talk about it. But during the press conference, I think it was remarkable to hear the success that we're seeing with this voluntary program in the regions of California where it operates now versus on the East Coast where it's mandatory. They're not getting the same level of cooperation and participation and reduced speed. So to Director Rouse's point, I think it is a great model, and hope with both Greg Hart's, Assemblymember Hart's support, we'll be able to be recognized statewide. We didn't mention or put much of a spotlight in the presentation, but our ambassador program is with companies that support these shipping efforts to reduce their speeds and improve air quality and mammal environments. If it was statewide, we'd be able to pull off of companies that are really going for the entire state of California just versus the regions where we're now operating. So very hopeful for the future.
That's great. Any public comment on this, Madam Clerk?
Chair Capps, members of the board, we did not receive any public comment on this item.
Okay, well, with this one, we do need a vote because there is an MOU involved. So I would ask for a motion, please, in a second.
I'll move the recommendation.
Great. Director Rouse, and then we have a second down here with Director Prodi. Roll call vote, please, Madam Clerk.
Director Hartman?
Aye.
Director Nelson?
Aye.
Director Lavanino?
Aye.
Director King?
Aye.
Director Prodi?
Aye.
Thank you. Director Julian?
Aye.
Director Aiello?
Aye.
Director Rouse?
Aye.
Director Patino?
Aye.
Director Infante?
Aye.
And Chair Capps.
Aye.
The motion passes unanimously.
Okay, that brings us to the end here with just announcements first. Any announcements? Or, I mean, I can just let everybody know that this will be rebroadcast on Sunday at 5 p.m. on the Channel 20. And with that, we will adjourn.